How's it? Welcome back to Baz's Garage for part 4 of the Kingkat build. Once again, we are keeping it simple stupid, so that's our motto from now on: keep it simple stupid, or keep it stupid simple, one of the two. So what we've done is we've got the chassis here and we've flipped it upside down, and the first thing you want to do when you flip it upside down is check that the chassis is sitting flat and level. So obviously grab the old level, stick it on there, and that's pretty bloody good that way, and pretty bloody good that way. So we're starting off with a nice flat chassis that we know that's level, so whenever we do anything underneath here we can work to the level. So the next thing I did was I bolted the motor on down here. So the motor is bolted on, just temporarily bolted on with a couple of bolts to where it needs to go, and I thought, right, I want to see what the height of the pulleys are going to be. So I just grabbed a couple of pulleys and just sort of chucked them on to see what sort of height I've got there, and it works out that I could quite easily, I've easily got a good 30 mil underneath there. So because of that, I thought, awesome, the steering that I did on the Billy Bob mower will work here quite nicely without having to raise the engine or muck around. I can just do the same way, and I say keep it simple stupid. So that's what we're going to do. So once I worked out this basic height, I grabbed a long steel bar that looks a little bit like this, and I just chucked it in there and then checked that it was level, and then it enabled me to work out down the back here approximately where the right angle drive needs to go. So it actually works out that the right angle drive is going to be flush with the chassis there, so it means we can actually lower the seat by a little bit too, and also it makes it nice and easy to get it sitting where we need to for the rear cog here, and we'll put a spacer in it. So now that I know what the height that's going to sit at, that's cool. We can we then have to have a look at the chassis, and there's a few things that were going to be in the way for what we needed to do. So the first thing I did was got out the old angle grinder, and we cut that bit out because we don't need that bit. We cut this bit out because we don't need it, and we cut that bit out so we don't need it. So we ended up with quite a nice area in here. Obviously by welding the front axle into the centerpiece here, it's going to add a lot of strength to the front. I'm going to leave this on here for the moment until I work out exactly how I'm going to do the front end, but effectively we've now got enough space to do the type of steering that we're looking at wanting to do on the last mower as well. So the next thing we had to look at was how we set up the steering here. So we've talked a little bit about ackerman before and how you do your ackerman, so I'm actually going to show you how you work it out. These particular ones here are currently a right angle. Now some people think that if you have a right angle on dirt, that's fine, you don't need ackerman. My personal preference is that I think you need the ackerman because it reduces your rolling resistance going forward, and that's got to be a good thing. So as you're cornering, it lowers your rolling resistance and it gives you a bit of turn in. That's my personal opinion. So the way we do ackerman, it's not rocket science. So what we need to do is we need to get a bit of string, and we need to bring a line basically down to the back of the chassis here. Now this is the center of the axle that goes across. So all we're going to do is we're just going to wrap this around here a couple of times. Now I've just put a bar on here. We'll just wrap it around a couple of times just so it sort of stays there. Try and keep that as tight as we can. Right, that's to there, and then we're going to bring this one up to here. So once we've got this wrapped on here, hopefully I can do one of those over thingy bobs to hold it there. Right, there we go. So now what that does is effectively, it gives you, now we might have to move this out the way, but effectively what it does is it gives you the point where these here, when we've got the axle straight across, that hole needs to be on that line. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to cut through here with a grinder, and I'm going to bend that in so it then sits on that axis when that's straight along there. And what that will then enable us to do is to have our different turning each way, so we end up with better turning. So I will go ahead and do that soon. So I'm going to basically cut through here with a grinder and then bend it back till it lines up with there, and then re-weld it so that we're going to have the right angle. And obviously the same thing on this side, we're going to have to do the cut through, bend it back, and then we're going to end up with those sitting in the right place. Once we've done that, we're going to look at the next part, which is going to be putting in the bars. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably cut a slot out of here and put the bar through so that it's all tucked out the way. Whether I use this or not, I'm not sure. We'll try to utilise some of the parts. If not, we'll just buy some new hinge joints and make a new one. So that'll give us the access to there. So if we come up over to the bench here now, I'll show you what else we've got here. So Pete from Motive Parts, awesome service. Ordered it one day, got them the next day. So if you need anything for your mower building, get Pete at Motive Parts, man. He is awesome. So what we've ended up with is a couple of bearings, 3 bearings and a universal. So the plan at this stage is basically to use the old steering column that we had. We've got this nice little piece that we're going to put on the bottom, and that's going to give us the movement that we need underneath the car, underneath the mower. We're going to have one of these sitting in the bottom, coming up to a adapter here, going through one of these and one of these. So we're effectively going to end up with the steering wheel on the top. We're going to end up with one of those. Cut this pipe here. We're then going to put one of these in here, so it's going to be an angle like that, and then one of those at the bottom. So I'm hoping that the 2 at the top and the 1 at the bottom, because it's only going to be short down here, is going to be enough. Otherwise I might have to put another bearing here, but we'll see how that goes. So that's what the steering is going to look like, and then we'll obviously mount this straight through to the front piece that we did before. So the front piece that we've got to make up, I've drawn a little picture again. So what we're doing here is we've got a piece of 34mm pipe. It's actually steam pipe, so it's quite thick walls. We've got some 6001 bearings with a 12mm hole in the centre. So if we look at it, that's that sitting there. All right. The whole thing is 66mm long. Now this height you can change depending on what you want to go. It just so happened that 66 is what I ended up from a 50, an 8 and an 8. So we've got these 2 bearings, and there's 6001 bearings. These are a 12 by 28 by 8, so they're 8mm thick, 12mm in the centre and 28 diameter. It just so happens that they fit beautifully into this piece of pipe. Now you could get carried away if you had a lathe and you could machine it all out and fit them all in, but trying to keep it simple, stupid, this bit of hose works fine. Cut yourself a piece of pipe that is going to sit on the edge of the steel here. You can't have it sitting on the seal. It's got to be mating on top of here. Now if you haven't got the right size, you could put a washer and then put the tube against it. I was quite lucky, this is just the right size pipe, and all it is to keep the bearings apart and not to get them collapse on each other. So that will effectively go inside there. The bearing will go on top of here. If I got a knockometer, yeah, got a slight knockometer there. So just tap this in. So what's going to happen is that that's going to go down, touch on the piece inside there, then the whole bolt can go through, and it'll end up turning on those bearings, and that piece will end up turning. So what we'll do with that piece, is if we come over to here, I'm sort of umming and ahhing about where I'm going to put it at the moment. So it could go here, and we wouldn't have to cut a hole through this. But I need to have enough length here to get the right ratio between the angle, the length of this and the length of this. So this will probably end up being on this side, and I'll have to cut a couple of slots in here so that we can have one piece to come through and it can turn, and then we'll have the 2 pieces that come out here that will attach to the rod that goes here. So yeah. Okay, so what we did was we ended up having to cut a bit of this stuff out. So we've got this piece here. So originally you saw this we put onto here to put the 2 hinge joints onto each side. We've added this piece onto here. If you want to know the dimensions, just hit me up for those. I think that's from memory about 90mm from the centre, and it's about 70mm for there. So the idea is this is longer than this one, which gives us a bit of a leverage effect, which means it makes it slightly easier to steer. So I've on the front of here, I've welded on a couple of brackets just temporarily at the moment. So these 2 are welded on here. So effectively what we end up doing is we've got the 2 washers, because as we talked about, we've got to have the washers touching on the bearing face there. So the washer goes underneath, this goes through into here, that sits on there, that sits on there. We get the bolt, we'll just line that up a little bit in here, get the bolt, put the bolt through there, and hopefully it goes right through. Okay, so the best way to do this is to assemble this all up nicely, get it sitting square, and then tack these in place so you've got it sitting where it needs to be. So effectively what we've got now is this piece here can move side to side. Now we may have to do a bit more grinding in here to make it all fit, but effectively we've now got this bit that moves along here. Now I'm not sure whether I'm going to need to do any strengthening in here or not. There's not really a huge amount of load on this particular part, so I may have to weld a piece in here or bar somewhere to strengthen it up, but I'll see how strong it is once I've done. So the next thing we need to look at is, we talked about these axle parts here, so we wanted to bend these in so we could get the ackerman right. So effectively what I did was cut through there, and then with a bit of string and it sitting in the right place, with it straight through there, it should be basically going straight through the centre of that hole. So it goes straight down to the back of the axle, and it gives us our ackerman setting. So we've now got that correct, and yeah, they worked out quite well. Right, so I'll just take this off, and the next thing we did was we worked out the where we needed to put the tie rod ends. So I'm actually using one of the tie rod ends from the original mower, because that was all right, and then I've got a couple more here that again I got from Motive Auto Parts. Again, awesome service, came overnight, really awesome. So these are going to go through the hole here and bolt into here. So I think I've got some bolts we can maybe put that on there with. And we'll tighten that up onto there, and then so remembering this is upside down, so the bolts will of course go this way around, so that if the nut comes off, the bolt won't fall out on these ones. So that's one done, and we've got the same on the other side where that goes through into there. I think that's the right one for there. Just tighten these up by hand at the moment, and put this one up into here. Right, so now what we've got is them all attached. So when we move one, we move to there, and we've got our steering. So you can see it doesn't take a lot of movement to get to the lock. Now we can adjust the lock if we need to. There's a couple of ways we can do it. We can either move this out a little bit or grind a little bit of it off here, but I'm just going to see how much lock we actually need. That might be enough. We'll compromise at the end of the day. So that's now obviously working quite well, and we're pretty happy with the way that that's come up. So the next thing that we did was I got one of these bearings here, and I drilled a hole through here and I bolted it in. So that's actually facing up underneath there. Then I grabbed the original steering shaft, and that's going to come through here with the bearing. Something pretty similar to that. Now I'm going to use this original piece here, so that's going to go onto there, and then that's going to bolt into here. What I'm also going to do is use these other pieces. That's the right nut for that one. No, it's not. I'll just get the right nut for it so we can assemble it up so you can see. So then this long piece here comes underneath here, bolts through into the front. Oop, I think that bolt is too short. Bugger. See if we've got a slightly longer one. Yep, this one should do. So I'll bolt this into here. Alright, so this now will come back to the bar here, and as you can see it moves back and forward. Alright, once I get the height of this right, there's enough room, there's probably 5 or so mil once this moves back and forward. We'll drop this down, there'll be enough room for it to not hit, and it keeps everything completely out of the way and all protected. And as I say, you don't need to move that far to get lock to lock. We can still do some adjustments if we need to, but that's looking not too shabby. Now the other thing to remember is once we put the pulleys onto here, you can see that the pulley, where it's here, there's plenty of room underneath for the steering to be not in the way. We could even lower that down even more, but as you can see, the shaft comes through quite a long way, so that's the lowest point. So this is going to keep it here to protect that. But yeah, there's plenty of room underneath there for that to all move quite nicely without anything touching anything. And we've got good, nice, easy steering. Okie dokie. Stop. Alright, so we just showed you how the steering wheel works there. Some of you may have noticed that I've joined a couple of those rods there. Now the reason that I join those rods is because I don't always have the right tap or the right thread, and I want to use the bits that I've got as much as I can. So I thought I'd do a little bit of an experiment. So when I join these rods together, so here's two pieces of steering rod. So what I do is I taper the ends a little bit, so you can see that, and then I put them into a piece of right angled channel, lay them in like that so they sit nice and square. Once it's sitting in there quite pretty good like that, I'll get my my welding gear, my glove and my helmet on, and we'll just give it a bit of a tick up. All going well. Right, so we'll flip it over and do the other side. And then obviously alright, so effectively we've welded that together now. We've almost not looked at the bench as well maybe. Let's see what happens. We'll just turn this noisy thing off. Get all the stuff off here. We'll grab ourselves a set of pliers so we can get it out of there. So I could probably do a bit more welding on that, but what I wanted to show you is that if we get this and we now put this into the vise, now it's obviously quite hot, but just as a bit of an experiment. Now I don't confess to be a wonderful welder by any means. I can make shit stick to a blanket, but that's about it. So if we hit this, like effectively what I'm trying to show you is that, what do I do with those pliers? Effectively what I'm trying to show you is that the steel is designed to bend. So even if we put it right down here, let's see what happens with this. Because it's designed to bend, like seriously, okay, so that's how much it took to break it, and it snapped all the welds out. So I don't think we're going to have an issue with it breaking. Like I say, I'm not the world's best welder, so with it doing that much smacking before it breaks, I'm kind of happy that there's not going to be an issue. So that's my own personal theory. That's basically it for Beggars Garage today. I think that we'll be able to finish the steering, and we'll be able to look at mounting the T-drive, so then we can look at where we're going to mount the seat height and work on the steering height as well. So we're still keeping it simple, stupid, but until next time, Beggars Garage.